Okay, what you see on the screen here is a single page from the PDF that I just shared. And you can call this many things. You could call it a decision-making tree. You could call it a one-point rubric. You could call it a protocol. But we've had success with this over here because we've kind of had to think about what are we going to do and what are we not going to do. From ed tech resources to just plain decisions within the curriculum. There's so much to decide. You might even sometimes feel overwhelmed by the choices. This is unprecedented. This is uncharted territory. So we felt that it was important for us to have some help in making decisions. So what I'd like to do this morning is walk through this one page, and maybe for you, in your own way, there might be some item in it that can help you make a decision, because everyone's scenario at their school is going to be different, okay? Number one, right there it says on purpose, okay? I encourage everyone that I've worked with to consider their purpose first when deciding what online tools to use, when deciding what to assess or not to assess. Now, this could be what I'm going to do for my last unit here in May. This could be what I'm going to put on my report card comments. So you can transfer this to your own situation. One fun exercise to consider when trying to decide on your purpose statement for decisions. You know, the hot word, unfortunately, is talking about curves. So if you imagine your usual grade distribution, after I give a unit assessment, for example. Well, my results come out as this nice bell curve of results. I get some low marks over here, some better results over here, and a bunch of middle numbers at the top of the curve. Well, under these circumstances, while learning online during a global pandemic, what do you expect that curve to look like? So if we were together, we could break out a piece of paper and draw what we think the curve will look like if we use the exact same tools that we always used. If we use the exact same assessment we always used, what do you think that curve's going to look like? And you might see your U curve or bell curve kind of moved over to the left, a lot lower results. And working with our staff and faculty, one conversation we had is, our instinct is, well, we want to maintain the usual grade distribution, and so we'd like to see that bell curve back over to the right with the usual results. And what I'd like to advocate for when you're making your decisions is, instead of maintaining the usual grade distribution or bell curve, imagine your results being an ascending slope towards everyone or as many people as possible getting very positive results. Again, this isn't really about maintaining the same results because this is a different situation. This is historically different, it is unprecedented, and it's not the same. So I don't think we should be advocating for the same results. In this final month of May and your final report card comments, I'd advocate for even better results should be your goal. We should be reporting on positive messages. We should be reporting on good news. And so that's a real fundamental question, because sometimes our educators, they have in their head this thought of, I need to keep it the same. I can't let them get away with this. And some of this negativity, we gotta let go. You know, press the button, let the song play, let it go. And we gotta aim towards the better results for the children. And I'll talk more about this in a minute or two. Now, you might ask yourself, often people instinctually jump to, well, how can I do that? I have learning targets or educational goals that I'm responsible for. I have standards that I'm responsible for. And so I can't just jerry-rig it so it's easier. So number 2 and 3 on this decision-making tree, it talks about prioritizing. And I think that's a really important word. It's not cutting. It's not diluting. I think in this situation, as everyone knows, and a lot of this conversation is just pat on the back, further confirmation or legitimizing even further things you're already doing because you're great educators and you're already doing these things. I think we really need to prioritize a lot of our decisions in terms of learning targets. What is the priority? So let's say you have your standard summative assessment. It may have a cluster of standards, that's math language. And within that cluster, there might be 5 standards or 10 standards. Or you might have a cluster of standards, and within that cluster even are 10 standards or skills. I think now's the time to make priority decisions to say, out of all of these standards, I think this one's the most important for them to learn. Out of all of these even smaller standards or even smaller skills, never mind the clusters. Either these are, or maybe this, even just one, is the one learning target that I think they really need to learn. Now, how do you make that decision? On this PDF, on page 8, is a link to a supplement. And that supplement includes further information on choosing power standards. But you can get more into that if you need to, but not right now. But I think a really good litmus test for what is a priority. Ask yourself this one question. It's kind of like a litmus test. If you think they really, really need to learn this, can you right now, off the top of your head, name the next learning target, the next standard that they will not be able to do if they can't learn this now? And if you cannot do that right now off the top of your head, that might not be a priority. And I think that's okay. Now, I'm a curriculum guy, so I'm the accountability guy and the numbers guy, and here I am saying, let go of that. That doesn't mean that you don't have learning opportunities for everything else. Sure, you can, and sure, you should. But again, the topic here is assessment. So what I'm saying is the ones that you choose to formally assess, the ones that you choose to comment on your report card at the end of the year, make those the priorities, not the supplemental ones. And that's an okay thing to do. Again, this is a very different time in history, and it's okay to make priority decisions. If you're worried about coverage, you know, you're still covering everything, but these are the ones that I'm going to more formally assess. I'm still doing the other stuff maybe, but this is the one I'm going to formally assess. But again, we're picking the one that you can name why it's important, but we're also picking the one, going back to question number 1, that you think they will experience success with. And that's an important point too. So that's an important measure. Can they experience success with it? And can you name why it's a priority? You should be able to do both of those things. Next category, this is really important, and this can help you make decisions even further, what to assess and what not to assess formally. And this can help you make decisions in terms of what tech tools to use. It says right there on the screen, validity. And that's a very important word in this conversation. What is valid and what is not valid? If you were to look up SAT, ACT, valid questioning, a valid SAT question, they'd say, is it assesses or gathers evidence for what was really sought. I think a good way to use that word for this conversation at this point in time in history is consider this. What is a valid assessment? A valid assessment for this time in history is going to be what matches a successful learning experience while you have been teaching them online. And that's kind of a key word, matches. It's got to match the learning experience for you and your kids online. Think of it this way. I've been Zooming folk and you've been Zooming folk, and you and I, we both know that there were those days where everything went as planned. That was a great online lesson. That was a great Zoom session. And then we all know there might have been that one online learning day, that one lesson within your unit where, yeah, that didn't go so well. That did not go as planned. The internet connection was wonky, or it just didn't go out as well because it was my first time with this tech tool. So what I'm saying is the valid summative assessment would be the ones that match the successful experiences. And this requires some honest, private reflection. And this is something only you, the professional educator, and you're a professional and you're important, can do. You can self-assess and say in your own head and heart, this didn't go so well. Therefore, I'm not going to put it on my summative assessment or talk about it in my report card comments because the online learning experience was not great. It's not your fault. This is new. This is different. It's not the kids' fault. This is new. This is different. It would be invalid, using this definition, to use a poor or not great learning experience on a summative assessment or in your report card comments. Again, it's no one's fault. It's okay to think about it in those terms. The next one is an interesting question. The next category, we're using the word integrity. And integrity is a fancy word for cheating. And this is something that usually I've seen in these conversations across schools is one of the first things a lot of teachers worry about. They're gonna cheat. And what I'm gonna say to you is, I understand where that thought is coming from. And yes, it's an important issue. But look at the wording here, what I wrote. Basically, what I'm saying is ask yourself, was a method communicated to try and better assure that there wasn't as much cheating? Because we do want them to be independent learners. But beyond communicating and trying, there's not much you can do about it. And that's a big point. Think of it this way. Really change your mind about this. If family members, for example, help their kids on their homework, is that cheating? And everyone's instinct is, yes, that's cheating. Think of it this way. This is a global pandemic. There is a wide range of emergency situations. Some people are fine. Other people are in harm's way. This is unprecedented. This is extremely different. Let's pretend other emergency situation existed. There is a natural disaster. There is a refugee situation. Let's pretend you have a refugee situation and the refugee family is trying to get to the border to Europe from Syria. And a mother or father carries his child for 5 kilometers during an emergency situation. Are you going to criticize the parent for carrying their child during a refugee situation for 5 kilometers? No, you wouldn't. Families help each other, and that's okay to do. If there's a natural disaster, an earthquake or a flood, are you going to criticize a family for working together? No, you wouldn't. Some of the most interesting report card disclaimers across the top that I've seen in our international schools. I saw one international school actually put across the top, "We thank our parents for their collaboration," and these comments reflect that. So instead of fighting it, they actually admit and agree with it and are thankful about it. So on integrity, I really encourage everyone to, yes, promote individual learning and individual progress. Promote, I really hope you do this on your own. But if you have a student who got some help from a family, and it's May and the school year's almost over, and it's a global pandemic, I just don't think right now is the best time to get in a fight over that issue. Again, play that button on your table, let it go. In the supplement linked to this PDF is a section with a bunch of video links. And one of the video links is a Rick Wormeli video. Wormeli's an assessment guru. And someone asks about cheating. And he very strongly says, try and understand, cheating is a reaction to students when they feel like a summative assessment is a gotcha point. When they feel a summative assessment is a teacher saying, I'm gonna check you. He says, flip it. Why aren't assessments, and another article that says, why aren't assessments during this time period, us, all stakeholders, rallying around expressions of learning? I really love that. That's incredible. Rally around expressions of learning. If a student hears you saying that we want to work together and rally around your expression of learning, that's very different than a student hearing, I'm going to check you. Then cheating should go down. It was a webinar, so again, someone brought it up at the end in the Q&A and said, I think my students cheated, what should I do? And he kind of laughed a little bit, and he said, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but let it go. There are other issues going on right now, bigger fish to fry. And this is something, a fight we don't need to get into right now. We all have that student in our class who, I remember when we were together and they said something smart aleck, and I know they're cheating, and I gotta win. I can't let them get away with that. Yes, it's important to put your best foot forward, to say, this is what I'd like you to do. Yes, it's important to trust them and have faith. But in the end, you're the adult in the room. And so you got to be bigger than that battle sometimes. And now, during this time of online learning, during a pandemic, let it go. Don't get in that fight. Nobody wins. That's my advice on integrity. Are there tech tools out there? There's something called Proctorial, and it tracks your eye movement and everything. It's cool. But again, beyond that, I'd say we got bigger issues than that. So do your best, do try, do express this is something that I'd like you to do on your own, but maybe let it go. Conversely, be careful about asking them to cooperate with their families, because you don't know who's living with who, because they might have to live with aunts or uncles because their parents are stuck in another country or something, and that could be a sensitive issue for some of our kids. Moving on, the next category is authenticity. And this is something that may help you make some decisions too. Out of all these tech tools, out of all of these learning experiences, I got to choose what to do. out of all my usual test or summative assessment that I would use, I got to choose which parts to keep and which parts to prioritize. As current educators, I'm sure you all know this, of course, but I'd advocate for keeping the higher order thinking parts, the performance tests, the parts that ask for transfer of learning. These would be the best parts to keep. In fact, if I had a choice in the matter for everybody, I would advocate for a lot of interviews. Now is a great time because you may have asynchronous schedules and you can book interview times and just talk to them one-on-one and let them demonstrate their learning to you right there in a nice personal conversation. That's a great thing to do too. Number 10 and 11. Number 10 and 11 are about validity again. And remember what I was saying before about validity. If it didn't go well during your online instruction for that whole unit across, say, 3 weeks, then you shouldn't summatively assess it. It would be invalid to do that. You can informally assess it, but to summatively assess it when it didn't go well online, because this is so different than the regular classroom experience, it would be invalid. 10 and 11 are related to that. It's thinking about the whole unit, the whole assessment process. As you all know, great formative assessment includes great feedback. And great feedback will help them learn more, and then they'll do better on the summative assessment, for example. So again, you are very, very important because you have to be honest and privately reflect in your own head and heart, how did that go? I know if I were sitting in the classroom with Jimmy and I sat down right next to Jimmy, made eye contact, and we talked about it, and I gave Jimmy this feedback on this formative assessment, he'd get it. And he'd probably do better on that summative assessment, and he'd probably get better report card comments. But you're not with Jimmy right now. And tell the truth in your heart and head privately. How has your formative feedback gone? How have you known that it's getting fed forward? We all might have that one day. Oh, this one day I gave formative feedback to my kids. We had some private Zoom meetings and we talked face to face. I think they're really invested and they got that feedback and they played it forward. It's awesome. But we may also have had that day, yeah, I gave them formative feedback comments. Did they read them? Did they use them? I don't know. Yeah, maybe comparatively, that wasn't the strongest feedback. Maybe comparatively, they didn't take that feedback from the formative, and it's really not going to help them further much more. I would encourage everyone, when picking what to summatively assess or picking what to comment positively about on the report card, it would be more ethical and more valid to summatively assess only the things that had the positive feedback formative experiences. If that feedback formative experience was not a great experience, if you're not sure they didn't learn from that feedback and improve their learning because of that feedback from that formative experience, it would be invalid to summatively assess them or comment about that on their report card. So I encourage you, when you pick your tech tools to use, pick the ones that are going to help with the formative feedback the most. Pick the ones that are going to make the best experience so you can better assure that, yes, they got the feedback, and yes, they're playing it forward and they've learned it and they're moving forward with it to better themselves. It's not just comments typed up and I think they read it. Number 12 on this decision-making tree is about equity. And that's a big issue. We read about it a lot in the schools in other countries or in the USA. And there is an equity gap, maybe not with our students. But think of it this way, these are two important things. Number one, of course, if you have multiple sections, if you have 4 teachers for grade 4, and there are 4 homeroom teachers, of course they should be doing the same thing. It should be common. So all of these things in this decision-making tree should be considered as a team, and then they should all be making the same decisions.
Paul, can I just jump in for a second? We're getting close to the end of time. Participants have to jump into a next session in a few minutes.
Okay, I'll wrap up.
To wrap it up.
I'll just wrap up by finishing really quickly. So it's very important that you support your learning support kids, your ELL kids, your special ed kids. Do something completely different. If you have a usual method, don't do it. Talk to their support teachers. Be wide open to doing something different. It goes back to the purpose. Do something very, very different. I'll just close by saying this. Understand that this is different. In the supplement, there are articles linking to what is called emergency education, crisis education. I think some of the best stuff is there. And if I had to redo this, because since time of publication, things have gotten worse, I would have retitled that and used it for that. This is trauma-informed education. And you are important to them. And the decisions you make in terms of what to do online, the decisions you make in terms of what to communicate to them, good news is important too. Trauma-informed educators say, you are so important to the kids because you give them a connection when around them there's a flood. You are so important to the kids because you create islands of competency, a place where they can feel valued and have a good positive self-esteem. I can learn even when these things are going on. And you do that for them. So make positive choices in this remaining month and in your report card comments. Why slam them with gotcha points? What's the point? Give them good news about their island of competency. Give them valuation. In some cases, you may be the only person who can do that. And that's why we appreciate you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'll just unmute. Maybe if we can give Paul a round of applause. Thanks very much for sharing. The link will be in the chat. If you haven't downloaded it already, you can also access it on the resource page of the schedule for VTC. We hope you enjoy the rest of your sessions this morning, wherever you're tuning in from. There's still plenty of great things on offer. Thanks very much, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, good luck with the rest of your school years, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.